Let's go ahead and get this meeting started. This is Livingston Parish Council meeting. All public notices have been sent out. Today's date is July the 28th at 6 o'clock here at the Livingston Parish Council. So, Ms. Sandy, to get this started, I believe tonight is the invocation. Mr. Averitt, did you have?
I have someone.
Yes, you had it right the first
All
time.
right. Well, you know, let me just say, I've heard lots of prayers coming from this council, and some of the finest ones I've ever heard have come from our parish clerk, so.
That's our girl right there.
I just want to say, thank you so much,
Humbly.
Ms. Sandy, for doing that.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Lord God in heaven, we stand before you tonight, Lord, and we just praise your name. Lord, and we just want to tell you how much we need you. Lord, we need you like we've never needed you before. Lord, we ask that you be with each one of the council members, our legal counsel, and our parish president. Lord, guide them and direct them, dear Lord. They need you. They need you to guide their steps, not to the left or to the right, but keep going straight, to be in your will, Lord, because if we're not in your will, we're doing all our work in vain. Lord, please protect us. Please protect our law enforcement. We still continue to pray and lift up all those families who've lost loved ones. Lord, we just love you and we praise you, Lord, because there's none like you. Lord, we pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Face the flag. Mr. Girlinghouse, would you lead us in the pledge?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Andy.
Ms. Sandy, before we forget, if you would go ahead and call the roll
Yes.
to make sure we have a quorum here tonight, please.
Mr. Ard? Here. Mr. Garlinghouse?
Here.
Mr. Harris?
Here.
Mr. Talbert?
Here.
Mr. King?
Here.
Mr. Averitt? Mr. Lobel? Mr. Mack? Mr. Wascom?
Here. Please just double check your cell phones tonight, just so you might want to just check that before we get started. Also, I want to, as item number 6 on the agenda, we will have a public input. If anyone in the audience desires to speak on any specific item, please raise your hand. You'll be recognized by the chair and have the floor too. So, item number 7 is presentations. Tonight, I'd like to recommend, at Mr. Scooter King's prompting me, we have Troop 283, I believe, from Immaculate Conception Church in Denham Springs. Would each one of you maybe stand up and give us your name and what school you go to, or?
I'm neighbor in Prestridge. I go to Denham High.
Thank you.
My name's Nicholson. I go to Live Oak High School.
My name's Ordway Pearson, and I'm homeschooled.
Well, thank you so much for being here this evening, gentlemen, and I hope you enjoy it. And thank you for joining the scout. What's that?
Happens every meeting.
Huh?
That beeping happens every meeting,
No, they don't have
every meeting.
Okay.
I can hear you.
You know, I'm really proud of the scouts. If I'm not mistaken, some of the astronauts were Eagle Scouts. I think the majority of all astronauts were Eagle Scouts. So I'm counting on you guys going into
We
space.
just got two
Okay?
new Eagle Scouts that finished 2 weeks ago. We had a court of honor and I was doing their work. It was amazing. It was a good day.
Okay, fantastic. Item number 7A is an audit presentation by Mr. John Murray with Laporte. Is he here?
We're not, actually, he made a presentation to the finance and we
So,
are
All
gonna
right.
recommend acceptance by the parish council.
okay. Item 8 is the adoption of minutes from June 23rd and July 14th. You've all had a copy of those minutes placed in your box and been able to look over them. A motion to accept and adopt those minutes as recorded would be in order.
Motion.
Motion by Mr. Girlinghouse, seconded by Mr. Jeff Ard. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposition? None being, motion carries. Item 9, Parish President's Report. Mr. Leighton Ricks, I believe.
No report.
No report as of tonight. Well, thank you for being here tonight, Parish President.
He just came to smile at us. That's all.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, no doubt.
Item 10 is a home rule charter amendment regarding term limits. This item was requested to be put on the agenda, I believe, by Mr. Gary Talbert.
Actually, that, 10A was by Mr. Moody, and I think we've worked that out, right?
Yes, sir, we have.
That in the past, bond counsel has kind of handled that for us. And so with some inquiries to Mr. Jim Ryan, the current bond counsel that's doing the work, I think is gonna do it pro bono for us again.
That's fine.
Am I correct on that? All right.
So this will be for the, attorney to, get it on the ballot.
Yeah, what happened is we had a miscommunication. We had already approved the ordinance
Right,
to put term limits on the ballot
For
for the home rule
November.
charter. There's some steps that
didn't get done.
didn't get done in a timely manner, and we cannot make the ballot that the ordinance was approved for.
That's fine.
So consequently, that ordinance becomes null and void, so we've gotta do it again. And that's what 10B is for, is actually an introduction. Now, I might have messed up. I put March 21st as being the introduction. You know, as the date, which is the next available election. However, since it's a minor election, we could end up bearing the brunt of the whole election.
Well, that's where my
So it's
question
not
was going.
fiscally, it's probably not the best fiscal deal. So we talked to some members of the Home Rule Charter Commission and asked them if they had some recommendations, because we didn't want people to think we were shopping an election day. So we wanted some input
Or just
from,
putting it off. We
you
didn't
know,
wanna-
wanted some input
Yeah,
from
we didn't wanna do that.
people in the Home Rule Charter Commission. And I realize this is an introduction, and normally on the introduction, we don't have any speaking. But if, you know, they've done some research on what dates are available, and the next major election that we have, that we're guaranteed to have a lot of, you know, stuff, would be the school board election. Am I correct in saying that? That everything else could be some millages, could be this, could be that, but there are no guarantees that there'll be stuff on the ballot. So,
It has to be a state election, because if it's a state election, the state automatically takes half of the cost, and then we take.
but I think that school board election deal is on a state election day. I think it's a state, but anyway, so
And it could be any of a number of dates.
I'm trying to Chris, help me on this.
Yeah.
If we make an introduction and we have a date that's just in there and we're not sure that's the correct date, can we amend it
Yeah, I
in
think you
2
can.
weeks before we have the public, after we have the public discussion?
Yeah, I think you could adjust the date, to the ordinance. And I had the same concerns you did, that we ought not put it on a special election day.
No.
You would pick up a much bigger, share of the.
Do you think it'd be better just to table this until we get the exact dates?
Well, what I was wondering, if we could just introduce, we could either introduce it tonight and amend the date at a later date, you know, amend it in 2 weeks when we have a date, or,
Either way, because obviously it's gonna be after March, and so you'd have plenty of
Well, the
time.
whole deal on this is we're not.
What's
in a
the big
hurry.
rush on it
This is gonna
anyway?
affect us
Well,
down,
right.
you know,
I
Make it
guess,
to the
I guess the
agenda.
deal, it's kind of more about public perception.
right.
I mean, I'm gonna be honest with you, I mean, we did what we needed to do, and from a communications point of view, some things didn't happen, so it's not gonna make the presidential ballot in November. It's not gonna happen, there's no way to fix that.
Right.
So, the perception is that, you know, maybe it was done on purpose, you know, but we all know it was just accident.
It was accident.
The question is, so I put it back on the deal to get a date, you know, to get it set at some point in time in the future. And I'm not sure that the March date that's in the ordinance as it speaks is cost effective for this parish government. So my deal was to figure out what would be the most cost effective date. And so my question to Chris was, if we do it tonight, can we amend the date in 2 weeks? And then, I mean, we can go ahead and introduce it tonight,
Why don't-
amend the date in 2
Why don't
weeks.
we just wait till we have an exact date and,
You do that
and
too.
pass a new
I
ordinance?
like that a lot better.
Well, why don't we have a little
This is a-
discussion on
this-
when it would be prudent to have it? I think the midterm elections would be a better,
Well,
you know,
let's ask Ms. Stiegel, you were on the
It'll be
whole
2
start.
years.
Yeah, well, y'all came, I asked y'all to come to speak and then realized it was an introduction. and-
That's okay.
Can we allow?
John, you got time to let them talk?
Absolutely, Mr.
All right,
Gold, would you
please,
come?
yeah,
Well,
that's what we wanna hear.
I just wanna get her on record what her recommendation is, because
Okay, I was looking at the dates.
And you've talked to other people that were on the commission too, right? And you've got,
I've talked
look,
to a few of them.
he's
that
saying
were
no.
around. I didn't have a chance to talk talk to Wesley, I'm sorry. I
Okay.
did get a list of dates, I'll run that past you in a minute. But first of all, I'd like to tell you that, y'all found out it wasn't gonna be on the November ballot the same day I found out. So I know it wasn't anything that y'all did, you were just as surprised
Yeah, I
as
was
I was.
shocked.
And I know all of y'all to be, I've gotten to know all of y'all pretty much. I think the world of all of you. I think y'all try to make the right decisions that y'all can based on what your heart tells you and your brain. So I know y'all didn't do anything to that date. All right, we'll get that straight. But the powers that be, how it misplaced and who it goes to, I have no idea, neither do y'all, or y'all might. But having said that, it's all, that's done. We're looking for another date. I did have some dates that came up. There is well, the one for the congressional, but you told me that was too.
Well, it's just too early, because see, we've gotta
It's in
start
December.
over,
It's in
we gotta start with the
December.
introduction, the whole process, and we can't make those dates.
Right, and the next one is, it's a municipal primary. The deadline has to be in by December 14th, but it's a March 25th, date. Okay, the next one is, December 6th deadline, it comes up on March 24th, I'm sorry, of 18, and it's a December of 17 deadline. So, I mean, we can go all the way down to, December, the open primary for the congressional is, November the 6th of 2018.
I think that's when it needs to be.
No, I'm saying there are dates
Yes.
available, and I don't think y'all should have a special,
No,
let's pay
I
for
agree.
it type thing.
I think
None
we
of us
got-
want that.
I
That
think-
would be
I
a
think-
waste. We
yeah.
don't even think that.
Yeah, I think what we're looking
But
for is to
something-
figure out what date might have the most activity, whether it
Right.
be,
Hmm?
you know, if the school board election is a state election, they'll pay half,
Well,
and
I
we'll be splitting costs of school board. If the congressional election's a state election, and they're gonna pay half, and we'll be splitting. The main thing is, we don't wanna get stuck
Nope.
with
The
being the
whole-
only thing on the ballot, and then
Well-
Right.
us have to bear the whole cost of the
For-
parish
for
ballot.
one thing?
We could do it the next time, the next gubernatorial election, which is when we come up.
Well, then,
Because it doesn't matter anytime before then,
Right.
because it only
well, if we
affects
do it
us.
the next gubernatorial election, then theoretically, it doesn't, we get a 8-year break before it goes into effect. We already get a 4-year break before it goes into effect. So if it's not done prior to the next council election, then the next group elected will be exempt on the 3-year term.
Gotcha.
So we gotta do it before the next council election.
And that's the only time we gotta get it in. We just
We just
wanna
gotta
get it in
we
so it'll
just gotta
affect
get in
us.
before the next council election, so I don't know who the expert on this is, and I don't know how long it takes to determine. I don't know if Chris, you're the expert.
No, I'm not.
I mean,
He threw
the
that on
idea, and I'm, you know, we can introduce the ordinance and have the public hearing in
And then
8
it-
weeks
and then
or
adjust
12,
it.
it's kind of
Adjust the
irrelevant.
date, but at least
The-
go ahead
the
and put it
main
out there.
thing is that we
way
need
the
to-
public
we need to
Because then the
figure out-
public will know,
won't
yeah.
be-
If we get it introduced, we can have the public hearing at some point in time in the future, when we figure out.
The
Yeah.
date.
If you'd let me, I will ask you to just table this, I'll get with your bond counsel, now we know they're gonna do it for pro bono. And then, come with a recommendation about which election, which would cost you the least and what
That
the
would be
timing
pretty-
would
That's
be.
that's
Yeah.
perfect, I think that's great.
I'll make a motion.
So you gonna make the
I
inquiries
will.
into the bond council of what the election date is,
I will,
and then after we get that date, we'll do the introduction.
right.
We had a motion by Mr. Jeff Averitt to table this item until, I tell you what,
Further notice, really.
instead of using the word table, I think we should use the word defer.
Defer.
Okay?
Yeah,
And
defer.
second by Mr. Tracy Girlinghouse. Any discussion? None being, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
As long
Chris,
as we
you
get
gonna
this
talk
straight.
to Bowles and
Yes.
figure out the most cost-effective election date?
And I may have you a couple of choices, and you say A or B.
And then we try and get it as right as we
Yeah,
can.
then we'll have it in
That's
their hands way in advance.
That's good.
I
That's what-
agree.
that's
That'll
the
work.
idea. That's perfect.
right.
Thank you, scouts, again, for sitting through all this.
Thank you, Ms. Darling.
And if you have any questions on what or why we do the things we do, please feel free to raise your hand.
We did have a late arrival, if you wanted to introduce yourself.
Was there a late arrival?
Yes, it is.
Yes, I'm sorry. You want to stand up and give us your name and what school you go to? Well, they did, so.
Come on, son, stand up and tell me who you are. I don't know. Oh, look, he's gonna go to the front. There you go.
My name is Jacob Witten, and I go to the school in North Corvin, but I'm about to go become a freshman.
All
Well,
right.
thank you for coming Thank you.
Walker does that, well, there you go, you get rid of, there you go, okay, all
We
right.
pull them from all over.
Represent, Jacob. There you go.
Thank you.
Item 11 is board appointments. Item, letter A under board appointments is the Airport Authority Commission. I believe we've had a lot of discussion about this. We have 9 parish council members, but this parish council appoints 4 people to that commission. But we've passed a resolution already, having 4 members, and I think parish president has an appointment. A state representative from this district has an appointment. Well, tonight, to amend that resolution, what we would need is a motion to add 2 more appointments to the board. One by Sheriff Jason Ard, and the other one by Fire District 4.
James Lawson.
James Wascom from Fire District 4. So, what would be in order is, a motion, or maybe a recommendation by Mr., or a motion by Mr. Averett to announce the 4 members from the parish council, and with that resolution would be to add 2 more appointments to the board, one from Sheriff Jason Ard and one from Fire District 4. Did I get that correct, Jeff?
That works, Chris?
Yeah,
Chris,
I
that
can do
works?
that, I think that'd be
Okay.
fine. I couldn't find any prohibition for that.
Okay.
Tracy?
Say something on point, Mike Irwin?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And we'll have to get with James to
Yeah,
appoint.
we'll get with James.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, you wanna call the 4 names?
Yes, the 4 that we're gonna appoint tonight, 5 we're gonna appoint tonight is gonna be, Dana Rush, Mr. James Lobell, Jerry Lobell, I'm sorry, Mr. Jerry Bankston, Mr.
Harry Webb?
Harry Wells, and Mr. Mike Irwin.
Now, Mike Irwin will be a Sheriff Jason Ard's appointment.
He'll be
correct?
Sheriff Jason Ard.
Okay, all right.
You be sheriff
Okay.
designate.
Right.
Ms. Sandy, do you have a list of those
Who
names?
was before Mike Irwin?
Would you say them again and
Just before Mike Irwin?
Harry Wells.
Harry Wells, okay.
And so by naming them,
You got
make
it.
a
And then,
motion to put those on.
Our state representative, Mr. Clay Shake Snyder, wanted Barry Wall.
Okay,
And then, our parish president had asked for Miss Delia Taylor. So can
Delia
we point
Taylor
those two?
and
Barry
Barry
Wall.
Wall, okay.
Mhm.
Can we make that part of your,
Well,
resolution?
I don't know that we gotta.
We don't have
they-
to,
They have their own designees.
Yeah.
So, I mean, technically, Jason
We don't
can have
appoint
his
them.
own designee.
Okay, so we really don't need to vote on Mike Irwin either then?
Not
That would-
really.
Okay, okay.
Okay.
Or James Wascom.
Or,
Yeah.
Or
Yeah,
James.
they can just, they've got their own designee, so they just appoint.
so,
them.
but we need to vote on making those 2 to have appointments.
Yeah,
Yes.
we need
Yes.
to give those 2 the appointments and then the 4 we appoint.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay,
We just need to vote on
you got all
all
that,
four.
Miss Sandy?
Yeah,
Yes.
but we don't have to like ratify their appointment or anything,
Just
or
lift the
say,
agenda and
yes,
add
they're
it.
on the,
Yeah, I think so. We gotta lift the agenda.
Go ahead and vote on the 4. Then we'll.
You've listed, board appointments, airport authority commission,
So I think you can do that all.
so, I think you could make that all in one motion.
Make that all in one motion
Okay.
to
I'll make
appoint 4
And
accept
add,
it.
and add 2.
and add 2.
Okay.
Okay,
I'll make that motion.
so the motion again is to appoint those 4 names and add 2 more, positions that will
The
appoint
commission, correct.
to the commission. Got that, Miss Sandy? Motion by Mr. Averett, seconded by Mr. Girlinghouse. Any discussion? None being. Miss Sandy, would you call for that vote, please?
Mr. Ard,
Yes.
Mr. Garlinghouse.
Yes.
Mr. Harris,
Yes.
Mr. Talbert,
Yes.
Mr. King,
Yes.
Mr. Averett,
Yes.
Mr. Lobell,
Yes.
Mr. Mack,
Yes.
Mr. Wascom.
Yes. We have 2 more late stragglers coming in for Troop 283. I'd like to ask you to follow suit from your fellow troop members that have come up to the microphone and give us your name and what school you go to, would you please?
My name's Lane Williams, and I go to Walker Middle School.
Lane, how old are you?
I'm 11.
Well, thank you for coming tonight. If you have any questions, please feel free to,
Frog.
I see that. I just asked earlier, and y'all.
how you do, sir?
Good, I'm Cody Williams and I go to Westside.
Cody Williams. How old are you, Cody?
14.
Thank you again for coming tonight.
Where's West Side at, Cody? That Walker?
It's in Walker, ain't it? Yeah. Lord, man.
You don't stand a chance.
Of course, y'all do all meet in Denham Springs, right? Okay, just making sure. Okay, next, item B is Fire Protection District Number 1, Mr. Shane Mack.
Yes, it was brought to my attention that I had a board member, whose appointment was expiring, and I just wanted to reappoint that board member to Fire District 1. His name is Gary Glasscock. And I wanna
Gary
make-
Glasscock.
That's right. I want to make a motion to reappoint Gary Glasscock, and his new term would expire 1/1/2017.
1/1/2017. Ms. Sandy, you got that? Motion by Mr. Shane Mack, second by Mr. Jeff Avery. Any discussion? None being, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item C, fire protection, and D, we're gonna pull from the agenda tonight. I believe we still have some time, but we're working on that. Letter E, fire protection district number 2, Mr. Tab Lobel.
Yeah, we've got a same thing, a board position that needs to be reappointed, it expired, so, Bernie Ross.
Barney Ross.
Yes. And, also there's an at-large position there, has a board member at-large, they'd like to, put Dwight Hutchison in that, so.
Okay.
I don't know if we need to go separate or if we can do it at the same time.
Dwight Hutchison at large.
Right.
Do you have the time the terms expire, or does Ms. Sandy already have that?
We,
Go ahead.
we already have it.
You
What
already-
we would be doing is their appointment, we would just kind of be ratifying, because state law allows them to make one from them,
Okay.
their board.
All right, so a motion for both those appointments, seconded by Mr. Girlinghouse. Any discussion? None being, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 12 is to hold a public hearing and adoption of an ordinance regarding commercial development exemptions. I hereby, let's go ahead and read this ordinance by title. I believe we are required to do that before we have a public hearing.
This will be proposed ordinance 16-26, an ordinance to repeal, Chapter 13, Planning and Development, Division 3, Commercial Development, Section 13-67.4, Commercial Development Exemptions of the Code of Ordinances of Livingston Parish, to remove exemptions relating to any new commercial developments that allow exemptions for developments approximately 1 acre or less.
All right, what this does is just any commercial development over an acre currently comes to the Livingston Parish Council for final approval. Anything that's under an acre was able to stop at the planning commission before it got to the parish council. And we just feel like the parish is moving forward and it's starting to get a little crowded in some of the commercial areas, so we're just getting rid of the exemption. So anything less than an acre would have to follow under the same rules as anything over an acre, would still come to go through all the same procedures except come on to the parish council for final approval. Is that correct, Mr. Mack?
Well, no, currently, anything less than an acre does not have to go to the planning commission to be reviewed. And this exemption being removed would allow all new commercial developments.
Under an acre.
Whether under or over,
Okay.
all new commercial developments would need to be reviewed by the planning commission if we remove this exemption.
And then come to the parish council.
Yeah,
With
ultimately,
their-
Okay.
with their
All commercial comes to the
recommendations,
council.
right,
Okay.
yeah.
ultimately everything.
Yes.
Right.
All right, the motion's been read by title by Ms. Sandy. Is that a motion to,
Yeah, I make a motion that we.
before we do that,
remove the exemption.
let me go ahead and open a public hearing. So I hereby declare a public hearing open regarding this ordinance. Is anyone here in the audience in the public, here to speak for or against this ordinance? Please raise your hand right now. Ms. Darrell?
I'm for it.
Oh, okay.
I'll make a motion to close the public.
Motion by Mr. Talbot to close the public hearing, seconded by Mr. Scooter King. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion, the public hearing is now closed. Motion to adopt the ordinance as amended, as written?
Correct.
By Mr. Shane Mack, seconded by Mr. Girlinghouse. Any discussion? Mr. Sandy, would you call for the vote?
Mr. Ard,
Yes.
Mr. Girlinghouse.
Yes.
Mr. Harris.
Yes.
Mr. Talbert.
Yes.
Mr. King.
Yes.
Mr. Averett.
Yes.
Mr. Lobel.
Yes.
Mr. Mack.
Yes.
Mr. Wascom.
Yes. Item 13, discussion of an ordinance enforcement of junk cars, trash and debris, high grass. Mr. Bubba Harris.
Yes, sir. I put that on the agenda, and I know most everyone has been around Livingston Parish for a while. And there is so much blights, especially in these smaller subdivisions, that it's just unreal. And I don't understand how people can live like that. And we have ordinances against that. But there's only one problem with having an ordinance against something, is having the money and being able to enforce that ordinance. And that's the reason I brought this up for discussion, is to see how we can go about doing this. I know, Mr. Chuck's here tonight, and he's more or less handling this and doing the best he can with what he has. But, I'd just like some suggestions on maybe something else we can do.
Could we get Mr. Chuck to come up to the podium?
Yeah, it's hard to keep up with that much going on in this parish.
Mr. Vincent.
Good evening, council. How y'all tonight?
Good,
Good
good.
evening.
What would y'all like me to tell you?
What,
How much money do you need?
How can we make this easier to do?
Layton's got a deep pocket.
I think you need to
There's
put the
plenty of
cowboy
money,
hat
right?
back on before
Yeah,
you
okay.
start.
Jennifer said we got plenty
I
of
got
money.
a question, John.
I should have worn a black one tonight.
Chuck, Mr. Averett has a question.
What did the surrounding parishes do about this problem? That would kinda help
Ascension's
us.
the only one I've really talked to about Mr. Barn Bourgeois. He's the building official out there. He said his rural areas, they don't do anything. If it's an established subdivision, commercial development, they go in there, send them a letter, give them 10 to 15 days, I don't know exactly how many, he said somewhere in that range. If they don't, then the parish will go out there, cut the grass, do whatever they gotta do, and send them a bill. If they don't pay it, then it's put on their tax roll.
In our parish, don't we do like 60 days or 90 days? What do we do before we go clean it up?
Oh, we good.
What I do whenever, whether it comes from y'all or constituents, whoever, comes to parish president's office, down to the permanent office, we go out and investigate, come back, take the pictures, send them a letter, give them 15 days to contact me and let me know what their plans are.
Thank you.
Chuck, after the 15 days is up, how do we handle that? Tell me what we do. Like if, you know, I know what happened, like I submitted one, Kevin went and took pictures, we sent the letter.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? We had, actually the letter had been sent on I think prior on another occasion and nothing had done, and we did it again.
That's correct.
And then we came before the council and we had an item on the agenda to move forward with charging them, you know, criminal, and you gave them like another 30 days or something like that. And then they cleaned it up. So at what point in time does the council need to act to help you support or to give you support or whatever on making this work?
We try, Parish President and I have discussed it before, try not to be just a policing agency, okay? Like come down on behalf, send your crew. If they'll work with us, then we try and give them a little bit more time. 30 days goes by, hey, they don't do anything, I send them another letter. They receive it, they'll contact me. If they don't, accept it, comes back, then I'm gonna start bringing to y'all as council members in y'all's district, whatever it is. What do you want me to do? That's all I can do.
Okay.
Well,
Go ahead, Bub, I'm sorry.
you know, one I have, and you went and looked at it, and we thought it was gonna be taken care of. And it was kind of partial, I guess you could say.
Well, they tore it down, they just didn't remove it.
Right, exactly. And I'm still getting a lot of complaints on that.
I'm
And he,
still working on that.
yeah, he told of course, you know how it is with people talking.
Right.
But he told the residents around there, he said, I got enough pull, I don't have to do nothing.
He did?
Yeah.
Wow.
That's nice to know.
No, I thought about that. I said, I don't know who he got pulled with. It's not with me, that's for sure.
Mr. Vincent, if we
but-
give you, I'm sorry,
Go ahead. that's
if
fine.
we give you an address and you come back to this council with a property or the property owners that just have refused to answer 1, 2, or even 3 letters, can you come back with a document to the council regarding that property of a condemnation? Or in other words, that this property is not able to be inhabited, needs to be condemned and demolished. Can you come back with some type of letter regarding that? And then at that point, my question is to Mr. Moody, can we take a letter from Mr. Vincent at that point, give it to parish president's office, have them do, or move forward with either cutting grass or tearing down? Now, I understand there's gonna be cost, but can we legally do that at that point?
Yes.
Well, they know the procedure, and the condemnation of a building is a little bit more involved.
Yeah.
Ends up coming to a hearing before you guys after they give the proper notice, et cetera.
Right.
Cutting the grass is a little less
Okay,
onerous.
I guess my question is to move forward with condemnation. I've got a couple one in Maryland. These people, residents have just had enough. And so my question is, what do I need to do to get this moved forward, to get it condemned, so we can move
You talking
forward?
about Pine Bluff?
Pine Bluff Road, there's one in the end of Maryland on Corbin, I believe, back there, and there's one on Old River Road. I've got a call this week. It's just terrible. Rats, snakes, it's just out of control. Okay, let me ask you a question. If money,
You can file suit.
Okay.
That don't mean they're still gonna do anything.
well, and if money's the issue, then I've actually contacted the fire department, districts, and said they would come out and do a controlled burn, because it's all falling down, and they do a controlled burn. That would basically cost the parish nothing.
No, if they wanna go do that, that's fine.
But I mean, legally, how can we do that?
When you talk about, when we talk about money, we talking about the legal process to go
Well, the
through?
legal process, and then we would have to hire additional people if we
Okay.
were gonna try to get into the grass cutting and, well, I'm not gonna let our guys.
We
do
don't
that.
want
Well,
them to.
so my question is,
It's, I think with enough budget, we could hire enough people to try it, but the problem is, Gary, Councilman Tapp, we're growing so fast, we've got so much of it, you're never gonna get on top of
okay,
it.
well, here's my question, Chris. We're doing a deal with an outside firm to sell surplus property that we have, or condemned property, or whatever. If we do a condemnation and we go tear a building down, does that property become ours?
No,
No.
no.
Is there a way if you have liens against property to seize it?
Well, I'll have to check into that. You
I mean,
are able to put a lien against the
That would
property,
go
so
through
that
the
one
tax
day it gets
assessor.
sold.
I mean, I understand, and so, I mean, that ends up with another line item in the budget that theoretically, one day, we're gonna get the money back.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? My question is there a process that we could create legally within, state law, where we could do a condemnation, then, end up with a lien, and in some way, shape, or forms, go ahead and, take ownership of the property or does everything have to go through a tax sale?
Well, I think your state law and your ordinance allows you to put a lien against the property. It doesn't allow you to just go and take the
I
property.
understand that.
So, we have distributed to you before the total procedure.
Right, the
for
procedure.
Condemnations, and Mr. Vincent's office knows it.
I
And I think in the past, you've budgeted some money that would only do a handful of these a year.
Right, and we understand that. So the question is, the thing that's stopping the process is money. So the question is there a way to recoup the money quicker than later? Sooner than later? I mean,
Yeah.
that's the question.
Yeah.
Is there some law, or is there some ordinance that we can create within state law that would allow us to deal with blighted properties that have been properly condemned in an effort to gain our money back? Because we don't have an unending checkbook to deal with all these properties. But if we could deal with 10 of them and then somehow, shape, or form gain access to them to sell them, through a sheriff's sale or whatever, and then take that money and reinvest it into cleaning up other properties.
Maybe we could check and see if other places around us have been able to do something like that.
Yeah, there have been some recent changes that allow the expedited taking of the property. A lot of that came out of the storm and the flooding situation. So I'll be happy to report back to you about whether or not we can do something to expedite.
But you know what?
I've had numerous conversations with other parish presidents, and, you know, it always comes back, and now I know why my predecessors didn't attack this thing. It is a no-win-win for us.
Right.
But
But you know what I
we gotta try and
found?
make a win for the
The
people that's
problem
living
is-
next to it, that's the problem.
It's a problem for our people.
Right.
Yeah.
It really is.
You know, one of the things, I've researched this
No, they do.
on some blighted properties,
It's like the little title sheet.
and what has happened is people had to move out of an area for whatever reason.
You can go in
And then somebody else went in and bought the properties.
and they don't have to,
And now,
the budget is.
this one particular subdivision, I know there's like 36 houses in there that is rental houses. The people live in Baton Rouge or other places, but they could care less about that. All they want is their money out of it every month.
That's right.
So maybe we need to look at that and contact the owners of the property instead of the renters, because the renters are not gonna care.
At one time, we had met with the tax assessor, the sheriff, and we're gonna get into something like that, and we all got busy, we just never went that route.
Right.
To really explore that. But money's the bottom line.
Yeah, I mean, we all understand money's the bottom line, so the question is, if we've got a limited number of funds, and I want, for lack of a better term, say we invest these funds into cleaning up properties, the question is, we're done at that point in time. However, if we could then somehow gain access or ownership of those properties, to liquidate those properties, to get the money back, then we could continue to clean up blighted areas or blighted properties without breaking the bank. And so that's the issue, is there a way, Chris, for us
I
to
don't
come back
know of
and?
an expedited way, but I will check to see if the law's changed
Okay.
recently.
And the thing is, it's just getting worse and worse and worse.
Let
I mean,
me-
you know,
Truly bad
Let me ask,
places,
and
you
before
know?
we get to the point of trying to decide how we're gonna get paid, the properties that I've sent to you through text on Old River Road, Pine Bluff Road, your office has the authority to do a condemnation on those properties at no cost to the parish, basically, other than y'all's salary.
I'll go out and make a report, I'll look at it, I'll deem it as.
Can you bring to this
unsafe.
council, can you bring to the council, every time a property is given to you, can you bring to the council report of
The
that
one on
property?
The one on Pine Bluff, I did do that, I submitted a report of condemnation,
Oh, you did?
and he came in that night and we was gonna give him 60 days or something. I heard
Is
nothing.
that the guy where the people stole it, he lost it?
I haven't
That's-
heard,
That's when you was on vacation.
he was here that night?
Yeah, he was here, and he said,
Yeah.
I'm not sure whether I want you to do it or not, because he was in a
Yeah.
legal
Oh, we
dispute.
need to do this one more time when I'm here. Yeah, we need to do this one more time
Must
when
have
I'm
went on
here.
traveler.
Well, that property there is actually in a legal battle.
That thing's
Yeah.
tied up with legal.
And we understood that, he asked us, said, well, can you condemn it? And we said, well, we might be better off not at that point, because he might not get his money back.
To answer your
Anyhow,
question,
yeah.
yes, if you send in a condemnation report, hey, request, I'll go out, make inspection. If I deem it is
Okay.
condemnable,
Thank you, Chuck.
then I'll give a report.
I'll get with you this
Okay.
week and try to come by your office or next week.
and Chuck knows exactly what I'm talking about. We were both raised up in the areas that I'm speaking of, so he knows.
We all
what-
have some in our area.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody got one.
It's the
I got-
ones that are health and safety related are the ones we really need to address.
Right.
Just because it's ugly doesn't mean it, you know,
I didn't know nothing about that.
you know. Sometimes you come back to my house and it's pretty ugly back
Mine
here,
is right now, I'm not gonna lie.
but it's not falling down. Anyhow.
Is there any other questions?
Chuck, I think that's.
Thank you, sir. I don't have any.
Chuck, thank you very much.
Thank you, Chuck.
Item 14, discuss illegal activity trespassing on Cable Harris Road. Again, Mr. Bubba Harris, do you want Mr. Vincent to be here for this one, or?
No, this really, I don't think has anything to do with him, but, what it is,
I don't even do that, that's swimming more.
well, hey, you can't.
That's because of all
Yeah,
the illegal
but
activity going on down there.
No, the reason I brought this up for discussion is, I've had people that live on that road that's complaining, and I think it was a couple of weeks ago, they had some people back there on the river, got on the hunting club property, which is private property. One fella, OD'd on drugs back there, had to get air med in there to haul him out. And that's the problem back there, is all these people going back there and partying late at night, all this. 25-mile-an-hour speed limit down the road. And they going through there 45, 50, or whatever they can drive. And I don't have a solution to the problem, and it's just like I was talking to, Mr. Harris a minute ago. That is the only place to put a boat in the Amite River from, from Parish Line to Port Benson, yeah, that's the only other place. And personally, I wouldn't put my boat in there because it's a gravel landing. But those kids
But
go
you
back
can,
there and
yeah.
party.
Is that public property
Yeah, it's,
back there?
yeah, it is.
Yeah, it's been
At the end
deemed
of the
public
road.
property. I think that,
Who owns it? Parish owns?
yeah, if I'm not mistaken, Parish owns that, because,
Can we write an ordinance to restrict use of it in times and then put a fence up and?
we can't.
When I say that, I don't speak for.
Yeah, this is the same road I'm thinking about. It's been a problem for a while.
It is.
Yes.
It's the same when you
I
think.
mean, the deal is if we do an ordinance to restrict the time usage on that particular area and then make it a law, then get the sheriff's office to do the enforcement, I mean, that's about all we can do to solve the problem, isn't it?
Well, I think that,
We can close
the
it,
previous council had tried that, and they put up signs back there. Well, I don't know what the signs read at that time, but they were torn down.
I remember Miss Jones was having to deal with a
Right.
bunch of that. and-
Right,
No, no.
exactly.
Okay, wait a second. You
Jen
don't,
was telling me that she doesn't think, according to what Sam was telling her this morning,
I don't believe we own
we
that.
may not own all the way down to that.
okay, so we own to some point.
So we need to check that out.
Y'all gonna
Okay,
check on,
okay.
I mean, the deal is, I mean, if you got a problem, the only way to address it, we don't have any enforcement. All we do is create an ordinance that let the sheriff do it.
Can be
so.
enforced,
We
that's
can
right.
have some signs up and the sheriff can go in and do his thing.
All right,
We
Well,
had
we need
someone wanting to speak on this item.
okay.
I don't know, Mr. H.N. Harris, he may be kin to Bubba Harris, I'm not sure. but-
Last cousins.
Last cousin. This is down there on Carew Harris Road in Harrisville and, yeah, so.
Henry Harris.
We've been missing you. Yeah, I hadn't seen you.
I'm back.
All right.
Thanks, good.
Well, this has come up in, 4 years ago. And, I've had some comments at that time due to it being the only access to the Amite River from St. Helena line to Fort Vesta, all the public, access. And it is public road, a public lunch back there that, well, I've used it myself. It's usable, and at the previous council meeting, we had some pretty good discussions, and one of the things involved in that was, expansion of the no wake zones throughout the parish. That was all part of this, but it was determined at that council meeting, and obviously it still is, a law enforcement situation. It's public property, you put the bridge across it and this, that, and the other, but you're still penalizing the public for something that the public is not doing. And it's a law enforcement situation. The public needs that, and needs that privilege and can enjoy that privilege of good people. But you compare that to several areas in this parish and more so in other parishes, and you have the same problems that actually just mushroom over time, and it's unfortunate we say that and have to live with it, but that's the real world, Jim.
Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
y'all.
Harris.
Thank you, Mr. Harris, yes.
Thank you.
So can we look and see, is there an ordinance on the books pertaining to this area?
Well, we don't know if it's
Yeah.
even parish
You
property
can
yet, do
find
we?
that out, I'm sure.
have
You
it.
got it. Well, all we
Okay.
needed to do was ask Miss Sandy, she'll have it.
Miss John Landry was the one that, introduced this ordinance. It's section 11-2.3. She did it as public boat launch rules. Any public boat launch is to be used for the sole purpose of launching boats. No picnicking, loitering, swimming, or littering will be allowed. Fines of $300 per person will occur for failure to comply. This was done August the 22nd, 2013.
Well, if
remember when
if
she
it's
was
public property, that ordinance is in place, it's just a law enforcement issue.
Yeah.
If you see
Well,
someone
I-
down there,
and-
they need to call the sheriff.
I don't know if y'all remember this or not, but, what was it, a few years ago?
I think it's about 3 years
A law
ago.
enforcement officer went back there because they got a call, and people were shooting guns and all this kind of stuff. And one of the officers got shot.
Come on.
Yeah,
All right,
We
just
need somebody who knows the sheriff. That's what I'm saying.
Well,
yeah,
maybe we could find somebody.
I don't know.
Lane,
He
you
told-
know him, Lane?
He told me,
You need somebody
Hey.
you call Genevieve.
Yeah.
You might call his mama.
Mr. Bubba, you
But-
wanna take any action on this tonight, or do you wanna?
no, let's just look at it and see what we've got, you know.
Okay, I'd recommend just get in touch with the law enforcement office, sheriff's office,
Yeah.
and anytime, you know, because we already have an ordinance stopping it, so.
Well,
is that-
and there again,
Or
I mean,
prohibiting it.
the law enforcement office is, especially right now, are very busy.
Sure.
You know, so I'm sure they've got more important things to look at
Okay.
than ride down there.
Well, they're
But
all
I will,
important is what you gotta look at, and then, so
yeah,
Steve's gotta be here important, or there important, and it can't be at all places at the
right,
same
he
time.
cannot be, no way.
So,
But,
we'll talk to Jason and see if
yeah, I've
he
been
can-
gonna set up a deal and talk to Jason myself.
Okay, next item on the agenda, unless there's something else you want to say, Mr. Bubba?
No, I'm through, thank you.
All right, next item on the agenda is committee reports. Letter A, the Finance Committee recommendations. I think they met tonight at 5:30. Is there some recommendations?
Finance Committee met tonight, received the, Livingston Parish Council, audit of financial statements, and we accepted it and recommended that the acceptance by the council. So I think it'd be appropriate this time that the council vote on accepting the audit from,
As we go.
from the audit.
Is that a motion?
Do earlier.
Motion by Mr. Talbot, second by Mr. Girlinghouse to accept the audit from Laporte John Murphy as the audit for for Livingston Parish budget.
All right.
Any discussion? None being, Ms. Sandy, would you call for the vote?
Mr. Ard,
Yes.
Mr. Girlinghouse?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Talbot?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Averett?
Yes.
Mr. Lobel?
Yes.
Mr. Mack?
Yes.
Mr. Wassel?
Yes. Item 15BI is an introduction of an ordinance to amend section 2.4 for the Finance Committee Chair, removing paragraph F. I believe this was requested by Ms. Jennifer on the administration.
I requested that.
Oh, Shane, okay.
It was brought to my attention that we had a conflict within this ordinance that conflicted with the home rule charter, okay, about who was responsible for signing checks and other documents. So after the reviewing, we're recommending that we delete section F of chapter 2, part F of chapter 2, section 2-4. How we handle this? Sandy reads it.
Yeah,
You want
yeah.
to let her
I
read it?
thought
I'll
you
make
just
the
describe it
motion.
a little bit, what it was.
Yeah, sure, but she can just read it and it's really self-explanatory.
We'll read by title, Ms. Sandy?
This will be proposed ordinance 16-34, an ordinance to amend chapter 2 administration, section 2-4 finance committee of the Code of Ordinances of Livingston Parish, and to remove part F that gives authority to the finance committee chairman to be an official signatory on documents that require signature or co-signature by a member of the governing authority. The public hearing will be at 6 p.m. on August 11th.
Right. And the conflict there is it's the executive branch's, responsibility, and they're accountable for signing checks. It's not the legislative branch of the governing,
To disperse funds.
local government. So we really need to take that out so it doesn't confuse people.
A motion by
So I'll
Mr.
make a
Shane.
motion that we delete section F.
Motion by Mr. Shane Mack,
I'll second.
second by Mr. Bubba Harris. Any discussion? None being, Ms. Sandy, would you call for the vote? And this is to introduce an ordinance for August the 11th and call for a public hearing at that date.
Mr. Ard?
Yes.
Mr. Garlinghouse?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Talbert?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Averett?
Yes.
Mr. Lidwell?
Yes.
Mr. Mack?
Yes.
Mr. Waspel?
Yes. Item 15B2 is an introduction of ordinances. This again was requested by Mr. Shane Mack. You want to explain it, Shane?
Yeah, one of the things I enjoy so much is being on the ordinance committee and working and reviewing these ordinances and trying to do the best job we can to get them right, you know, and make them as simple for the people of Livingston Parish to understand and comprehend so they can abide by the law. Okay, so the ordinance committee met a couple of times, and we've been working on the subdivision ordinance. And we had a lot of recommendations from the public to change certain things, you know, and we talked about all those changes, and we met a couple of times, and basically, we want to make some motions tonight to modify certain parts of that ordinance. Okay. In saying that, before we explain each ordinance, let me just go ahead and make a couple of statements. Basically, what we're going to recommend the change is in the subdivision with improvements section of that ordinance, is we're gonna, in stage 3, it talked about wetlands determination, and it talked about how it could be performed by a consultant, or it could be performed by the Corps of Engineers, okay? Based on that decision, whether or not within that subdivision, the servitudes and all were wetlands or not, you know, you had to find out if it was. If the consultant said that it wasn't, well then you didn't need a jurisdiction from the Corps of Engineers, you know. But we, after further discussion and research and communicating with, you know, wetlands consultants, felt like that we should just totally remove that section. It would speed up the development. And then in the final stage 5, we would require wetlands jurisdiction from the Corps of the servitude, you know, and roads and, you know, that type of stuff. And based on that determination, if there was wetlands within those servitudes, then we would require a mitigation or a permit. And the whole intent or purpose or the thought that would benefit the Livingston Parish is that, you know, our Parish President's Administration Office, the Department of Public Works, you know, once we take that over, they need the authority, you know, to be able to go in there and perform work on the utility or dig a ditch or that type of thing. And this would be filed in the Clerk of Court's office, you know, permission to be able to do that type of thing so they could go in there and resolve problems quickly. And we got feedback, you know, from the engineers, we got feedback from the developers, wetlands consultants, and we kind of all semi-agreed that that was the right move to make. So we brought it before the ordinance committee the other night, and with a majority vote, you know, thought we'd bring it before the council and ask for you guys to help us make that change.
You want to pick up
So-
the other items as well?
Yeah, let's go ahead with
And
this.
we'll just adopt them all at one time.
Yeah, I'll do the best I can to describe them. Another change, what we're gonna make is basically, if it passes, is we're gonna change the definitions of what is actually a considered a subdivision with improvements and without improvements, and what's considered a subdivision, a minor subdivision. Basically, right now, you know, your subdivision with improvements and without improvements is 8 lots or more, and a minor subdivision is considered 7 lots or less. So we're going to change that, and the minor subdivision is going to be 9 lots or less, and a subdivision with improvements and without improvements is going to be 10 lots or more. Okay, same rules to be followed within a subdivision with and without improvements. You know, we're just kind of changing the you know, the lot numbers within that. Now, go ahead.
No, don't you finish, go ahead.
Okay. Now, in the In the minor subdivision section, those are where, some of the, more detailed changes, that we're recommending, are at. Basically, in the minor subdivision section, the old ordinance said that you could have 7 total lots and 4 on a servitude, okay? We're changing that, and we're gonna keep that if the lots, any lot within that, division of property is less than an acre, then you still follow those old requirements. But if you're gonna subdivide that property in large lots of 1 acre or more, then the new ordinance is gonna allow you to have 9 total lots and 5 on a servitude, okay? Hopefully I explained that well. Let's see. There was one more change, and it was in section A, and I'd like to find that change so I can make sure that I communicate to you guys well, but basically, okay, where it talks about all divisions of property shall be commutative and shall not be re-subdivided within a 2-year period pursuant to the article. However, it may be re-subdivided if it's a subdivision with and without improvements. Basically, it says an exception to that rule, that 2-year rule. It says currently it says property of 10 acres or more where conveyance has occurred shall begin the commutative period upon the date of conveyance. Well, we're gonna change that and we're gonna say, property of 5 acres or more where conveyance has occurred shall begin the commutative period upon the date of conveyance. Okay? So it's to my understanding, if we make that change, that if it's 5 acres or more, you won't have to wait the 2-year period to subdivide it again. So, like I say, once again, hopefully I explained it to you guys well. If you got any more questions afterwards, I probably could do a better job explaining it one-on-one. But it was a unanimous vote the other night. We worked on this 2 or 3 meetings to make these changes. And with your permission, I'd like to make a motion that we introduce these ordinance changes.
Call for a public hearing?
Call for a public hearing.
August the 11th.
August the 11th.
Miss Cindy, would you read by title?
I'm gonna do one at a time. They gotta be introduced one at a time.
Okay, all right.
We're just gonna go in consecutive order of this section.
Okay.
We'll start out with section 13-5. This is gonna be proposed ordinance 16-35, an ordinance to amend chapter 13 plan and development, section 13-45 definitions, specifically related to the definitions of minor subdivisions, subdivisions with improvements, and subdivisions without improvements of the Code of Ordinances in and for the parish of Livingston. The public hearing will be at 6 p.m. on August 11th.
All right, we had a motion by Mr. Mack to adopt that. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Talbert.
Introduce.
I'm sorry, a motion to introduce a call for a public hearing on August the 11th. Seconded by Mr. Gary Talbert. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? None being motion carries. Do you need to read the next one, Ms. Sandy?
Yeah, this is gonna be proposed 36. Okay, this will be proposed ordinance dash 36. An ordinance to amend chapter 13 plan and development, section 13-49.3 submittals, subsection A, minor subdivisions of the Code of Ordinances in and for the parish of Livingston. Public hearing will be at 6 p.m. August 11th.
Motion by Mr. Mack for
Yes.
that one as well.
Yes.
Seconded by Mr. Talbert again. Any discussion? None being all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Motion carries. You need to read the third one?
Yes. This will be proposed ordinance 16
Pearson? I'm sorry, go ahead.
37. An ordinance to rescind and reenact chapter 13 plan and development, section 13-49.6, requirements for minor subdivisions of the Code of Ordinances in and for the parish of Livingston, and the public hearing will be 6 p.m. August the 11th.
All right, motion
Yes, I'll make that
by
motion.
Mr. Mack,
I'll second it again.
second by Mr. Talbot again. All, any discussion, none being, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Is there one more?
This is the last one. This will be proposed ordinance 16-38, an ordinance to amend chapter 13 plan and development, section 13-50, procedure for subdivisions without improvements of the Code of Ordinances in and for the Parish of Livingston relating to wetland determination. The public hearing will be at 6 p.m. on August the 11th.
Motion by Mr. Tab Lobel,
Oh, yes.
seconded by Mr. Bubba Harris. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? None being motion carries. Item 16, District Attorney Reports. Mr. Chris Moody.
Mr. Chairman, there's a case on your agenda tonight. I think we expect to receive some more information on that case pretty soon. I'm asking you just to defer this to the next meeting.
All right, that's item 16A, discussion United States Court. So we'll pull that item. Item 17 is a discussion of a deputy clerk. This was in regards to filling a vacancy that Miss Evelyn Wheat, we took office. I think we appointed her to this position when we took office in January. Undue circumstances, hardships has caused her to want to leave this office. She's turned in a resignation. Miss Sandy has worked really hard interviewing a bunch of qualified people for this position. And bless her heart, she works hard and
They are worked
she
down
needs
in
some
that
good
office.
help.
They
They
need
really
some good
do.
help. They really
So
do.
I don't know how they could do 5 people's work with 3 people, but right now they're doing
They
it
do
with
it
2.
too.
So, Ms. Sandy worked real hard. So is there a motion from this board to make a recommendation of an appointment for this position? Mr. Talbot?
I recommend that, we hire Miss Angie Cornett to fill the position of deputy clerk.
Is there a motion by Mr. Talbot to appoint Miss Angie Cornett, seconded by Mr. Bubba Harris? Any discussion? None being, is Miss Angie here tonight?
Oh.
Well, it's a pleasure to meet you, and let's call for the vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Motion carries. Miss Angie, you are
Welcome.
officially the deputy
Good
clerk.
luck. Good luck.
You'll get to meet each one of us, I'm sure.
Yeah, good luck with that too.
Yeah,
Some more than others.
yeah,
And
more than you.
I'd like to introduce her husband, Mr. Shane Cornett, sitting beside her.
Mr. Shane, now evidently, do y'all happen to live in Mr. Averett's district?
No, Mr. Lobel's.
Oh, Mr. Lobel's
District
district.
8.
Okay,
Well, that's good.
good, it's a pleasure to meet you.
Did we need to do
Shane or Tab, that's right.
what?
Next item on the agenda is item 18, I believe. It's motion to adjourn. Would there be a motion?
Can I make that motion again?
Mr. Jeff
Oh,
Avery,
look at this.
second by
They
Mr.
fighting
Tracy
over it.
Girlinghouse. This is a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposition? Motion carries. This meeting is adjourned.
All right, fellas.